One of the earliest images we ever saw of Bloodborne, even when we knew it as nothing more than Project Beast, was the familiar sight of a frenzied mob, and much of the first few hours are spent witnessing these same mobs, an image that transcends both culture and time. Humanity has come a long way over the centuries, but there are mobs now as they were at the beginning. There is something in our genes that causes this pack-like behaviour, that brings out the animal, the beast, inside us. What drives a mob? Anger? Anger at those who are different, whether it's the colour of their skin, their beliefs, or perhaps more relevant here, a difference in the very nature of their being. The classic medieval mob with fire and pitchfork hunting down a witch, hunting down a monster, hunting down a beast. But in truth, it's not the anger that drives them. The anger is a byproduct of something else, something essential to human survival, something that has given birth to atrocities and to wonders, something that is at the heart of Bloodborne's story: fear. Evolution without courage will be the ruin of our race. Welcome, I am Alex, or Silver Mont, and in this video we're going to be talking about the plot of Bloodborne. By its very nature, the game is obtuse and vague, designed with such intent as to let you make up your own mind, to fill in the blanks with your imagination. As such, all of the views in this video are my opinions and impressions of the game, and are by no means official or even in some cases perhaps even accurate. I'm not saying this is what happened, but this is my interpretation of the story. If you disagree, agree, or just want to share your own thoughts, please do leave a comment below. Because even though Bloodborne may lack the bonfires, the spirit of telling a story around that comforting flame lives on. As you might expect, we'll begin at the beginning. What do we know of our good hunter when we start the game? Precious little, because that is for you to decide. Bloodborne is a role-playing game in the basic sense of the word. You are playing a role. The story of your character is yours to create. Has your hero suffered a cruel fate, faced terrible hardships and come to Yharnam seeking a fresh start? Or perhaps you were a military veteran, experienced in war and determined to end the plague of beasts. Or perhaps you are nothing, talentless. Perhaps you shouldn't have ever been born. So what better place for you than here? Whatever the case may be, we know that you have signed a contract in order to become a hunter. In exchange for signing this, you receive Yharnam blood, where this all begins. Some have postulated that perhaps your character was making for Cainhurst, as a summons with your very name on it can be found upon the operating table you awoke upon at the start of the game. That is one way to take it. In my opinion, considering that invitation was not there at the start of the game, it is instead sent to us once we have become worthy. But you can also look at it as saying that we simply shouldn't be allowed to access Cainhurst from the beginning of the game from a gameplay perspective, so it is of course only found upon our later optional return to Yosefka's clinic. But what is a hunter? Why, quite simply, one who hunts beasts. When is life ever so simple? After we receive the transfusion, we appear to witness a living nightmare, wherein a beast stalks us, emerging from blood, only to be vanquished by fire, at which point we hear a familiar voice.
Ah, you found yourself a hunter.
Is the doll speaking to Gehrman here, or the messengers, or indeed the moon presence itself? Either way, I believe it is at this point that we become linked with the dream. In Demon Souls, our soul was bound to the Nexus. In Dark Souls we are undead, linked to the bonfires, and in Bloodborne, I believe at this point, during this strange hallucination or dream or whatever it is, someone or something has chosen us and established a connection between us and the hunter's dream. Shaking off these visions, however, we appear to awaken. Now, whether you choose to believe that everything following the blood transfusion was merely a bad dream or reality is up to you. Personally, I believe the game does not take place within a dream initially, and that we are, for all intents and purposes, still in the real world, up until the point wherein we die. When this happens, we are pulled into the hunter's dream, wherein we can meet the doll and Gehrman himself, the first hunter. Perhaps this is his dream. He doesn't tell us that. All he tells us is that we should go out and hunt some beasts. It's just what hunters do. And in Yosefka's clinic, we found a note telling us to seek Paleblood. But even when we question those few willing to speak to us, they seem not to know what Paleblood is. But we learn that if anyone knows what it is, surely the Healing Church would do. As the Healing Church is the source of this strange blood, making our way to the cathedral ward is no easy task, but the good hunter will find their way there. There we meet with the Healing Church vicar, Amelia, and moments after encountering her, she transforms into a beast. And by this point we know that the stronger your humanity, the stronger your virtue, the fouler a beast you will become. Clerics, of course, making the most dreadful beasts. The director of Bloodborne, Miyazaki, put it thusly: the urge to transform into a beast is in conflict with the basic sense of humanity we all have. That humanity serves as a kind of shackle, keeping the transformation in its place. The stronger the shackle keeping the urge to transform in place is, the larger the recoil once that shackle is finally broken. The results cause you to transform into a larger creature, or a more twisted one. Straight from the word of God, as it were, and to put it another way, the more you resist it, the worse it will be. So, are we meant to embrace it? Because as we fight our way through the game, we do begin to discover that some of the greatest strength available to us comes from embracing our beasthood, or at the very least, taking advantage of it. But back to Amelia. Did she transform when we came across her purely by chance, or was it in reaction to our presence? Several characters in the game make note that we have a peculiar scent, that we are moon-scented. Mayhaps this scent is what triggered Amelia's horrific transformation, but upon putting her out of her doubtless misery, we see a skull behind her, one that is all but confirmed to be the skull of a certain Lawrence. Upon touching it, we relive some of the man's memories, and more importantly, we learn of the password that allows us access to Bergenworth, another place of origin. As the game unfolds, we learn that the scholars of Bergenworth discovered something in the ancient tombs beneath the earth, but from here they had different ideas on how to proceed. Lawrence, a member of Bergenworth, seemed to split away from the scholars and instead left to found the Healing Church, which itself has two major factions, the Choir and the School of Mensis. And it appears that these factions do not, perhaps, have each other's best interests in mind, or at worst, are openly hostile to one another. But in the end, it appears they do have the same rough goal. Traversing the woods outside Yharnam, we find one more challenge keeping us from Bergenworth, the Shadows of Yharnam. And it is my belief that the Shadows of Yharnam are perhaps spectres born of Queen Yharnam's ire. Either way, once the good hunter arrives at Bergenworth, they will defeat Yuri, the last scholar, a member of the choir with a name oddly reminiscent of a certain witch, known as Yuria. Was she guarding this place, or searching for its secrets? In any event, she failed, and the good hunter will come face to face with Willem, now seemingly incapable of offering anything other than a clue, as he points towards the moon and a great lake. If the good hunter kills Willem, they will receive a curious rune, which bears a rather strong resemblance to the Elder Sign from the Cthulhu mythos, stories that Bloodborne borrows heavily from. The Elder Sign is used as a sort of defensive ward against deep ones, a kind of frogmen if you will. But the key here is that it is used as a defense. Why I bring this up will become evident shortly. Plunging down into the water, the good hunter enters the Moonside Lake, a place of dreamlike qualities, inhabited by Rom, the Vacuous Spider. It doesn't take much to realise that Rom isn't very spider-like in appearance. As for vacuous, well, the word means mindless, lacking of intelligence or thought. It could be used to mean that Rom is in a brain-dead state, so to speak. Still alive, still capable of movement even, but there is no soul there, no thought, no spark. Or perhaps to put it another way, Rom could be like an infant, a newborn child. It is alive, surely, but how can we know what is going on in that tiny little head? The child can't tell you, and most like won't ever remember those early days. Rom, and whether Rom is a he or a she is up for debate, but Miyazaki referred to Rom as she, although I've heard some versions of the game seem to imply or outright state that it is a he. But Rom doesn't appear to be much of a spider as, say, a caterpillar. And what might a caterpillar transform into? A butterfly. But I digress. What Rom was does not matter at this moment. What matters is that the Bergen spider is hiding rituals. And once Rom, the first great one we encounter, has been defeated, the walls of reality begin to crumble down. The ritual secret is broken, and we are told to seek the Nightmare Newborn. Confused? Don't worry, I was too. But I think we can start making some sense of it real soon. We were told to seek Paleblood, but by who? And we've not found it, have we? Not in the Cathedral Ward, not even at Bergen. We have found enemies with skin so pale they appear almost drained of blood. We have witnessed a pale blood sky in the unseen village. But where? Where and what is Paleblood? The good hunter must press on for that information. The unseen village, base of operations for the School of Menses, is where we start to gather the clues that let us piece it all together. The Great Ones, aliens, gods, whatever they are, they can be contacted by mere humans. All of them lose their children and yearn for surrogates. So what better way to lure them than with newborn infants? That is what the School of Menses had been attempting, I believe. Why? Because they wish to evolve. It seems that the School of Menses and the Choir perhaps disagree on what path must be taken, but I do believe their basic goal is the same. To evolve. Indeed, when we come across the presumed leader of Menses and the master of the nightmare, Mikolash, he urges some unseen force to grant them eyes, as happened to Rom, but we can't have that now, can we? So our good hunter makes their way into the nightmare of Menses. Now, here's where it gets quite speculation heavy. In my opinion, there is the real world that we inhabit for most of the game, and then the realm of the Great Ones. Let us call them World A and World B. After Rom is defeated, I believe World A and B begin to merge together, to overlap. The dream reality of the Great Ones becoming one with our reality. Why do I think this? Because of the land of Loran. Loran is a tragic land that was devoured by the sands. The tragedy that struck this ailing land of Loran is said to have its roots in the Scourge of the Beast. Now, where do we learn that? In the Nightmare Frontier, where we find the ailing Loran Chalice, which is also home to the Loran Silver Beasts, and it appears very different to the rest of the game. In my opinion, what happened in the game now happened before to the land of Loran. Loran merged with a nightmare or dream reality of the Great Ones, and Yharnam, as we find it after defeating Rom, is beginning to enter a similar state. That is why we can now see the amygdala. But you would be right to point out that the amygdala are there from the start of the game. It's just that we cannot see them until our insight is high enough, or until we destroy the rituals. But you know what they say, seeing is believing, and if you can't see something, who is to say that it's real at all? These are, after all, only dreams. The lecture hall of Bergen is trapped, floating somewhere between reality and the nightmare, between World A and B if you will, and it is a way to traverse into the nightmare. This could imply that the lecture hall is very close to entering into the nightmare altogether. Either way, I believe the Nightmare Frontier and the Nightmare of Menses are one and the same, as it appears you can see Murgo's loft from the Frontier. Granted, it appears to be day during the Frontier and night during the Menses segment. And notice how large the moon is, how close it is. But moving on, the School of Menses have lured in the Great One using infants, and then begun a ritual so they might enter this nightmare and presumably contact the Great Ones. But I don't believe it went exactly as they wished. They were playing with powers beyond their comprehension, beyond their understanding. As we make our way through the nightmare, we defeat Mikolash, the host of the nightmare, and yet the nightmare persists, and that is because the nightmare's source is, I believe, Murgo, the nightmare newborn. Moments before we encounter Murgo, we are met with the sight of a towering female in a bride's gown, hands shackled, blood stark against the white of her gown. Is this the same woman we met after defeating Rom? Is this Queen Yharnam? Most likely yes. But what we can say for certain is that she is a Thumerian bride. Who are the Thumerians? That is a topic for another day, but in brief, they were a race of superhumans who lived long ago and were custodians of the Tomb of the Gods, the Chalice Dungeons, beneath Yharnam City. It can be extrapolated and implied that Murgo is this Thumerian bride's child. Once it has been silenced, she will bow to us, seemingly giving thanks. But before that, we must needs defeat ourselves another great one. Murgo's wet nurse, as it is known simply. Once it has been killed, Murgo too seems to perish, and we are informed that we have slain the nightmare. At this point, our hunter's goal is complete. We have done everything we set out to, our contract fulfilled. Gilbert is now willing to let us wake up from this horrible hunter's dream, as he puts it. But ignoring that for a moment, let's talk briefly about the choir. It's entirely optional, but I want to point out that Ebritus, daughter of the cosmos and left behind Great One, resembles a butterfly. Is she the source of the Paleblood? No, I think not, but she may be the source of the Healing Church's healing blood. What do you think? Taking blood from some strange alien creature, what are they giving it in return for that? And the blood itself seems to have strong healing properties. But either way, Ebritus was the goal or the inspiration for much that happened at Bergenworth, but she resembles a butterfly, and Rom a caterpillar. Interesting. Back to the hunter's dream though, and now we have a choice to make. Do we submit our life to Gilbert to escape this dream, or do we refuse? The reason for your refusal are your own. Perhaps you do not wish to submit your life, perhaps you are determined to save Gilbert from his terrible fate. Let us go with the first one now. If you accept his offer, Gilbert will end your existence in the dream, and kill you in the dream, and you will awaken in what I believe is the real world. But note, you are submitting your life. So perhaps this is more important than we think, because a gravestone will appear for us in the dream, and at this point we are submitting one hell of a life, wouldn't you agree? A life that is strong enough to destroy the source of the nightmare, and overcome all sorts of beasts. Could it be that submitting our life is generating some sort of power to sustain this hunter's dream? Pure speculation, of course. I just find the wording very interesting, that it specifically says, submit. But if we do not submit our life, there are two possible outcomes upon defeating Gilbert. The first results in our character being accosted by a strange creature, and then seen in Gilbert's place, apparently replacing him. Captivated by the moon presence, you pledge to watch over the hunter's dream. But if the player consumes 3/3 of an umbilical cord found throughout the game, something quite different occurs. It appears that these umbilical cords are one step needed in becoming a great one, in evolving, and if we consume them, we will reject the moon presence and then promptly destroy it. Incidentally, a note found in the lecture hall refers to the nameless moon presence that Lawrence beckoned, and it would appear that this moon presence is, in fact, the Paleblood we've been searching for, or at least that's one way to look at it. Defeating the moon presence then cuts to a mysterious ending, wherein the doll picks up a slug-like creature and refers to it as, you guessed, the Good Hunter. And the trophy associated with this ending seems to confirm what you've probably figured out. You became an infant Great One, lifting humanity into its next childhood. As for the dream, much as Mikolash is the host of the nightmare, and Murgo the source, I believe Gilbert is the host of the dream, and the moon presence the source. That leaves a few questions in mind, does it not? But if you have Murgo and the moon presence, Mikolash and Gilbert, what about the wet nurse and the doll? Maybe the doll is a Great One herself, maybe the doll is our wet nurse. Who knows? Who is it that wanted us to find the Nightmare Newborn, for that matter? Gilbert? But if he is nothing more than a proxy to the Moon Presence, why does the Moon Presence wish us to find and defeat Murgo, and in doing so halt the Beast Scourge? Is the Moon Presence benevolent, or does it require humans for some other purpose, and require them to be more than sick beasts? That's certainly something to think about. Both the Choir and the School of Mensis tried to transcend their weakness to evolve, but in the end it looks like both of them were wrong. Or perhaps they weren't exactly wrong, but they only had half of the truth, because it appears our good hunter, in the end, found the secret to evolution. But there you have it. That is my interpretation of the story of Bloodborne. For now. These things often do change after all, and coming up next, I'll be making videos talking in depth about more specific topics, characters and themes. But I hope you enjoyed this video, and if you have your own theories, please do share them in the comments. Until next time though, you take care. And remember, fear the old blood.